Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Roach, and I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed you are, people. You listen to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Mashal St. Patrick Hewitt, and we're back again with another episode looking forward to the West Indies Championship, the Red Bull season, the Red Bull domestic competition. We've already looked at the Trinidad and Tobago Red Force with Dino, and the next team up is, of course, looking at the Jamaica Scorpions, and you know who's going to join us. Of course, it's got to be Jerome Foster. It can be nobody else when we want to look at the Jamaica Scorpions. But before I bring Jerome on, a bit of housekeeping for those who this may be the first time you listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and maybe you don't know how the West Indies Championship is running this year. So just a reminder, we will have 5 rounds of the West Indies Championship this year, much like last year. The first 2 initial rounds it starts this week, and then the second round is next week. The games are taking place in Antigua and Grenada initially before moving to Trinidad for the last 3 rounds of the competition. That will decide the winners of the West Indies Championship. But from the 5 rounds, essentially 2 teams of 11 will be selected. Let's call it Team A and Team B, so the best 22 players in essence, maybe 24 with a 12 man on either side, and they will take part in a tri-series being called the Headley Weeks series against the West Indies Academy, and from there we will have the kind of overall winners, so to speak. Call it like an all-star set of games at the end of the competition. And as Cricket West Indies have indicated, probably from those games, you'll get a West Indies A team touring, we believe, Bangladesh later on this year. That's what we've been told. We wait to see if that's what comes to fruition. But as I said at the top of the show, the latest team to look at going into the West Indies Championship is the Jamaica Scorpions. Now, Jamaica have had a great year in domestic cricket, reigning CPL champions, reigning Super 50 champions. And as much as I want to say Jamaica are going to win the Red Bull Championship, this one might be a stretch. But let's see what Jerome's going to say. Let's see what Jerome is going to say ahead of the championship starting. Maybe Jamaica are going to go for the 3-peat. I don't know. Let me bring him on anyways. Yes, Jerome, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Marshall, and great to be here again. Thanks for having me. I'd actually love for them to win the 4-day, because I think that one has been eluding us for 10 years? More than 10 years, 11 years. We last won it in 2012 when we won that 5 straight with that super team that the coach was a part of, actually. He was the fast bowler in the team with Nikita Milan, and he was the leading spinner at the time, coach and assistant coach now. So it will be great redemption for them as well, for them to win the 50 over as a duo, as a coaching duo, and now to come back and do the 4-day thing, which I think is a little bit more challenging, but let's see. I'd love for us to do it, though.
Yeah, as you correctly start off with, I think a lot of people will forget that once upon a time, literally, like you say, just shy of a decade ago, or just over a decade ago, Jamaica had won 5 in a row and was seen as the best Red Bull side in the region. Since then, it's essentially been a combination of either Barbados or Guyana who seem to win every single year. Jamaica haven't come close in a long while. Last year they came second last in the competition, the shortened competition. And Jerome, I kind of look at the team this year. In fact, let me bring it up. I hadn't even brought it up on the screen. I kind of look at the team this year, and I think this is where I want to start, Jerome. I'm going to call the team, and then I'm going to go in with a point straight away. So the team as selected: Paul Palmer, captain; Jamie Merchant, Alwyn Williams, Aldane Thomas, Leroy Lugg, Kirk McKenzie, Romain Morris, Abhijay Mansingh, Patrick Harty, Akeem Fraser, Marquino Mindley, Gordon Bryan, and OJ Shields. And unless you're somebody who follows Jamaican cricket keenly, there's going to be a few names there that people are going to be like, who? What? Where's this player? Where's that player? Who's this person? And so on and so forth. But there are quite a lot of interesting stories and selections within this squad that I want us to get into. But let's start here, though, first, Jerome, because I think it's worth pointing out the Super 50 squad that won a few months back. The top run scorers were as follows. Rovman Powell, Brandon King, Nkrumah Bonner, Chadwick Walton, Jermaine Blackwood, Odin Smith, Andre McCarthy. Those are the top run score averages, I should say. I shouldn't say really run scorers, but those essentially were the top run scorers in the team. None of them are in the Red Bull squad, right? Not what? So how many players did I say? Six. 7 players. Six or seven. I said none of them are in the Red Bull squad. Now, obviously, we know some are playing T20 competitions, some are with West Indies, some just don't get picked for Red Bull, so on and so forth. Let's start at the top then, Jerome. Is it plausible that the Scorpions can be competitive when so many of their leading batters in the country aren't in the competition yet?
I'm worried, actually. I'm worried about getting good scores with this 30-man squad that has been selected. Not to knock the players, but majority of them haven't played 20 plus first-class games. So it's almost as if they're being thrown into the deep end by the selectors. Leroy Lugg was the top scorer in the trials. He had over 400 runs. You would expect him to be selected based on the fact that he was contracted. He played last year, so he got that experience. But other than that, it's Paul Palmer Jr. and you hope for the best. Alwyn Williams has been around for some time, so it's scary. And for some, you would probably say, well, give the youth a chance. But in the wider scheme of things, I just can't see where we're going to get a lot of 300 plus runs. Mind you, regional cricket hasn't really turned out that amount of runs on a regular basis. But this composition, I am not saying I'm disrespecting the players or anything like that, but I'm a little bit cautious.
I mean, to give one of the players their due, the last Red Bull season, Aldane Thomas did hit a century, if I remember rightly. So he could, I guess, put his hand up and say, listen, I've contributed before. I've raised my hand before. Leroy Lugg is, I'm going to call him untapped potential. I want to call it that in so much as I don't know if he understands how good he could be. And I don't know if the time's going to pass him by before he realizes, or maybe you would say, because you've had a closer eye on it, maybe you would say, well, he might not have the game to get better, so to speak. But somebody who can strike at the ferocious strike rate that he can strike at, if he could just add a bit more solidity to his game, then you would assume he's got the tools to succeed. I'm even looking at the selection of Kirk McKenzie. I'm glad to see Kirk in the squad. If I'm honest,
that's actually my favorite pick out of all the picks because I think he needs a good run. He's been around the setup for some time. He's seen as that potential player who can go on and be that representative for the Scorpions for 10, 12 years based on what he did at under 19 level. He's a part of the emerging academy and he has been handed the captaincy. He didn't do so well in the Super 50, but that shows you the level of potential that is there and the amount of risks the selectors are willing to take with him. As you go back to Lugg, the issue with him is that he has all the shots. He has the power, but he has some balance issues at the crease. And I understand that the coaching staff has been working on that a lot in terms of getting him to be a little bit more side on and being able to be a little bit more patient and wait for the balls to be in his hitting zone because he can score as quickly as anything. He scored 2 centuries in the trials and they came at almost a rate of knots. They were blistering, really. But in regional cricket, it's going to be a step up. So you're not going to be able to hit 4 or 5 balls in an over within a 10, 12 ball space for boundaries. So you have to be mindful of that and be a little bit more circumspect in how you go about your thing. Aldane Thomas, he's well trusted. He has a lot of potential. The selectors have shown a lot of faith in him. When Robert Samuels was there, when Andre Coley just got into the job, he really entrusted him with the glove. And the Scorpions were struggling to find a wicketkeeper batsman. They tried Kennard Lewis. They tried the former injured player, Orion Williams. with the gloves. He was an opener as well. So they have done everything to find a proper wicketkeeper batsman. He's easily the best wicketkeeper in the country. Alden Thomas, he is. But it's in front of the stumps where things have not gone to his liking. He scored a century as well against an England Lions team, I think, when they toured here as well. So he has the potential to be that person that the team can bat around for long periods. But other than that, it's about what can you do for me today. Alwyn Williams, he has been prolific in local cricket. He has done extremely well. He has done well in T20s, 50 overs, 2 days. In the trials, he didn't really get any big scores, but I guess because of his experience, he was selected again. And you can't really count that as nothing. Paul Palmer didn't get a score in the trials, but he's their main batter. He scored a lot of runs last season. So it's part and parcel of the game as well. I just feel that if the players are able to be patient, and this coaching staff is very different from the previous ones where they're always in your ear. They're going to tell you what really is going on and what should be done. Nikita Miller said that the team is not being prepared to be a facilitator or being prepared to just go and participate. They are there to win the championship. And he, along with the coach, Andrew Richardson, has drilled it into the players since October that, hey, we're here to win this thing. We're not here to just make up the numbers. So it's for these 13 players now, because the chairman of selectors, Junior Bennett, did say that all the players will be back and available for the other 3 rounds. So the Brandon Kings, Rovman Powell, Dean Smith, all of those players will be back for the next 3 rounds. So it's for these players to ensure that when they get back, it's difficult for them to get back into the 14 or 15-man squad that will be selected from there on.
Those returning players notwithstanding, before I press record, I said to you, remind me, Jerome, didn't Javar Royal score a century in one of the warm-up games? And he said, yeah, he hit a century. But Jerome, when I looked at the squad, I don't see Javar Royal's name. So, and I'm not saying that Javar must be picked for his batting, because obviously we know what Javar can do with the ball, and he had a very good Super 50 tournament. Let's not forget that. So, other than Javar, are there some and maybe you want to speak on him? Are there some names where you're surprised the selectors have omitted them?
Derval Green, he hit a century as well in the very last trial match. So I was surprised that he wasn't selected, but I gather that there are some issues with him going through a full regional game because of his knees. He's been struggling with his knees for some time now. So that was a massive surprise for me when I saw the squad. Initially, Javor, not so much, because I think they have almost pigeonholed him as a white ball player. So his bowling needs a little bit more patience and him building up to a dismissal rather than anticipating for the batsman to come at him. So because regional cricket, 4-day cricket, not just regional cricket, the longer formats of the game, you need more time to dismiss batsmen. You need to work them out. I think he's still trying to find a way to bowl his best deliveries and to be a little bit more consistent with variations and so on. Patrick Harty, he's contracted, so they're going to probably give him that early run in the team. So that is part of it as well. He's the main left-arm finger spinner. So that's one finger spinner left arm. Royal is also a finger spinner left arm. So I think they weighed the option and saying that, hey, the contracted players might as well be given that opportunity first, right? So that's one spinner. Akeem Fraser is an off spinner. Jamie Merchant is an off spinner. He bats a bit at the back end. So that's 3 spinners. But you always want that additional or that X factor type of selection. And I guess that's where Abhijay Man Singh came in. He's
Jerome, pause. You're saying too much already. So let's first things first, because we want to talk about Man Singh in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's go to Fraser first. Yeah. Because when I saw Akeem Fraser's name, what was interesting about Fraser's pick is a lot of people around the region kind of pricked up their ears when Fraser's name was selected. He's been out of the game for a while. I think it was a shoulder injury. He got back in. Yeah, in 2020-ish, I want to say maybe 2019. Now, before he got that injury, he was selected for West Indies A. I'm not saying he would definitely have made it to the senior side, but he obviously was in the selectors' mindset. And I think certainly for the international audience, I'm not sure how many people know about Akeem Fraser. So I guess my question to you is, do you think he's back to his best, or is this just a tournament for him to find his groove again on the regional stage?
Yeah, I prefer him bowling in red ball cricket rather than white ball cricket. I've watched a couple of the sessions, and I've seen some of the trial matches, the footage while they are playing, the lives that are up on social media, etc. Still lacking some consistency. But what you get with him is that he's very patient. So he's willing to work over a batter. He's willing to spend a lot of balls bowling and bowling and bowling and trying to prize open that batter or try to deceive him, which is something that is very important, because you're not going to get 2 or 3 wickets in an over in the longer formats. So you have to be able to vary your lengths, vary your lines, different pace, and so on. So I am very happy to see him back, because I think it was a right shoulder injury. So that's basically his bowling arm. So that is massive. And he had to go through a lot of recuperation and times out, and frustration was in it for some point. He came back in the T10 league that was here, did well, and he was surprising to me. He wasn't picked for the early part of that tournament, and then he came in and almost turned out to be the leading wicket taker for his county that he was selected for. But he's captain in the Kingston Cricket Club, which is a famous club here now in Jamaica, one of the famous cricket clubs here in Jamaica. He was awarded as one of their best achievers for last year. So he's obviously shown that amount of courage to be back and qualities to be in the periphery of the selectors, to say, well, this is somebody who was on the cusp of probably West Indies selection 2 or 3 years ago. You remember he played against Shubman Gill and a couple of Viharis and some of these players who have gone to transition into the India team. He got a couple of them out as well. So you'd want to take somebody like that with you, somebody who has that amount of experience. And as I said, he gives you something different, even though he's one of 2 off spinners in the team.
And then you mentioned the X Factor, Mansingh. We shared a video on our Twitter handle the other day of Mansingh being interviewed. Excuse me, I can't remember the name of the kind of platform in Jamaica that interviewed him, but they did an interview with him. He spoke about his experiences in us playing in Australia, playing in England. Is this long overdue for Mansingh, or do you see this as a wild card pick that's worth gambling on?
It's always going to be a topic because of the relation and all of that, and we don't have to get into that because so that is one of it. One of the main issues that some people around the cricket might have it. But he averaged, I think, close to 40 in the trials. He had a lot of not outs in the trials. He had a 70-yard, a 40-yard not out. So he was one of the players who were willing to spend time at the crease, and that's not something that you normally have, because at one time he was being groomed to be an opener.
Yes.
For the Scorpions under the previous coach, but he didn't get a chance to be a part of a squad. So now he has been given that chance, but he'll be, I assume he will be batting in the middle of the innings if he gets a chance to. So that is one aspect of it. His leg spin has not been the greatest, but he has been given selections to different teams based on that. I think he has played 5 games for the CCC. He played in the Super 50 for the CCC recently.
Yeah.
So he has that experience against regional opponents. Is it a bad thing for you to trust somebody who is within your area or within your territory to do something that you don't have? Because that is one thing Junior Bennett has been crying about, that there's no potential leg spinner around. There's not the Odin Brown that he had, or somebody of the ilk of that, to really give you something different. That because the leg spinner on day one would probably get more purchase than the finger spinner is going to give you, because of the variation and the variety and so on. So you need that difference in the attack. I don't know if he gets into our best 11, but it's a risk that is worth taking, in my view, because it's something completely different and it's the best of what we don't have.
I think certainly people will be keen to see how he goes, because when we talk about leg spin in the region, it's not just a Jamaica issue. It's a wider Caribbean issue beyond what Karaya with the Red Force, and I'm trying to think of any other name that, obviously Hayden Walsh, but really and truly, if a leg spinner can stake their claim, then they can fast track everybody else, because the region's calling out for players with the ability. So
that's going on in world cricket with white ball cricket. They have been almost the stem for each captain or team to to have in a team, almost like a staple, because leg spin is almost difficult to score rapidly off. So that is another asset that he probably brings as well. They probably be using this format for him to get more overs under his belt, so he can probably progress into white ball cricket for the Scorpions down the road. Who knows?
Yeah, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, was he not in the last Tallawahs squad? I know he didn't play, but I think he was. I think he was part of their. I swear he was part of their squad.
Not the one that won, the one before.
Oh, yeah. So he's
he was
around.
He was in the 60 squad though. He was in the 60
That's
squad.
it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes, he was in the 60. Yeah. Sorry, he was in the 60 squad. Yes. And then obviously Marquino Mindley needs no introduction. We know what he's about, and provided he can prove his fitness and continue to take wickets, you would assume that should another spot open up on the West Indies side in the next year or two, you would assume Mindley is the next fast bowler to take the slot. Him and Anderson, Phillip, etc. So we hope that Marquino is back to full fitness and so on and so forth. But there are two names there that nobody outside of Jamaica will know about. Arguably, some people in Jamaica may not even know. I certainly, when I saw OJ Shields, I didn't even know who he was. And it was only because somebody sent me a Gleaner article. I think there's a piece on him in the Gleaner. I think maybe Lennox did it. I can't remember. And I was like, oh, he's a teacher. And then I started reading the article. What can you tell me about OJ Shields? I don't know nothing, Jerome.
Yeah. He's probably the fastest of the lot that is there, by the way. He's quicker than Mindley, quicker than Gordon Bryan. He would have played for the CCC before, while he was at, I think, GC Foster College. Or, he would have been a part of the CCC before. So I think he played like 8 or 9 matches for the CCC. So he has some regional experience. But he comes from St. Anne, the same parish as... Well, not the same parish as John Campbell. They play for the same parish. John Campbell is from St. Mary, but they play for St. Anne. He has been doing well in our domestic cricket. He's a threat. He bowls good pace. He swings the ball about early up, and he comes back and he hits the deck very hard later on in his spell. So he's somebody you can work with. He's not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination, but out of all the fast bowlers that we have in Jamaica, I don't think anybody can be surprised that he's selected based on what he has, his potential. Strong fellow, decent action, a very rhythmic action, and so on. And he's willing to do things to get wickets. He pitches the ball up, he looks to swing early, and after that, if it doesn't, he goes to the normal stop deliveries, which is back of a length. So that is something that I can tell you based on what I've seen. I don't know if that is going to be enough, but I think he deserves the chance. Nicholas Gordon wasn't selected. That was a little bit of a surprise to me, but I guess because of red ball cricket, they probably need some more patience again, as I've been saying. I think white ball cricket has shown extreme control. But red ball cricket, I think they're looking for something different, a little bit more pace, because Mindley offers steady diet. Basically, he's going to be on a penny all day. He's going to cause problems. And Gordon Bryan, he's raw pace, but I think he lacks a little bit of control. So let's hope and see if all of that is one whole unit that comes together for the Scorpions.
It's too early to say, and obviously, like you say, we've got the 2 matches first up. So it's Leeward Islands first, and then I'm trying to remember who they've got in their second one. Barbados, right? When the players come back, the Kings, the Bonners, the Son, and the so forth, which players in this squad do you think are most at risk? Or maybe I should phrase it another way. Which players in this squad do you feel better put up some good performances to ensure that they're still in the conversation come the last 3 rounds of the tournament?
Alvin Williams, Romain Morris, they have to be very good with the bat for them to stay. Abhijay Mansingh, I think, as well, is on thin ice. So that's 3. The all-rounder spot that Odean Smith is going to take, I presume that probably Gordon Bryan would be left out, even though he's contracted. Obviously Odean is quicker, and he'll add something with the bat as well. So if Brandon King comes back, that means one of Kirk or Leroy Lugg is probably going to be in danger of missing out. Even though Brandon is obviously not going to open, but for balance issues, you'd probably want him. One of them would have to go, and Rovman will come in for somebody else, which I think is probably Romain Morris. So those are the players that I think would have to do something different to show to the selectors that we deserve to be in the team, because Paul Palmer Jr. he has to be among what we have to come because of what he does differently. He's probably the only player in Jamaica and Jamaican cricket who we can say this man will bat 150 balls tomorrow. You can put your life savings on that. Normally he bats a lot of deliveries, so he's almost like that glue in the middle of the innings. So he should keep his place. But the others, as I mentioned, the Alwyn Williams, Log or Mackenzie, and Morris, those four batters, their positions are up for grabs, and Abijay Mansingh. So those are the 5 players. Because Jermaine Blackwood is supposed to be back as well.
Yes,
and
of course, yeah.
Yeah. So those are the concerns. And Bonner will be back as well. So that's 4. So maybe King would probably bat at 5. Who knows?
I was literally just about to say to you, so I don't even know who, because Blackwood, Bonner, King all walk in automatically. So then all of a sudden you're looking at who's
at 6.
Yeah, so who's opening then? What you send Palmer to open? Because
he has done that before. Done that before. But it's not his preferred position. But he has done that before under Andre Coley. When we had a similar dilemma, actually, when a couple of the players came back from West Indies duties and the selector said that they had to play. He had scored a century in the middle of the innings, actually. And then he had to go up to the top of the innings. So it's not something that is unusual for him. But I prefer him batting in the middle, which is probably 5.
One last one from me, Jerome, before we wrap this one, because I know what's going to happen. I'll finish the episode, and then the first comment I'll get will be the following: "Where is O'Shane Thomas?" That's the first comment people are going to say. So, Jerome, where is he? Do you know, actually, before you answer, I thought I saw his name in one of the trial games, one of the early ones.
He played all the games.
I played. Oh,
yeah. He played. He was there for 3 of the 4 that I saw. He was there. I don't know if they kept some undercover games, but I saw those. So he was there for those games. He didn't take a lot of wickets. Actually, he didn't bowl a lot of overs either. I didn't see 16 and 17 overs under his belt. So maybe it's a fitness concern, which I think is a big concern for him. It continues to be almost like a plague for him because the staff, don't want to call names now, the staff has an issue with his fitness. They don't see him being able to bowl at a high volume of pace continuously based on where he is fitness-wise. And to me, it's a little bit disappointing because the talent that O'Shane has, those things are almost supposed to be second nature because there are so many things that he can get in cricket based on what he has. It's something that Nokia has, just natural pace. And everybody now is waxing lyrically about Amit Nokia as being the quickest bowler in the world. He can touch those levels. He can bowl 90, 93, 94, 95 at will. He did that when he just burst onto the scene. But because of probably just lack of hunger, it could be lack of fitness, that shouldn't be a problem in modern day cricket because there's so much cricket and there's so much potential for earning that fitness really shouldn't be a problem. So I think if he gets a chance to work on that, because I gather that he trains with Johan Blake in the morning in terms of to do some physical exercise and so on to get his fitness up. If he can do that for the next 3 to 4 weeks, by that time the team probably comes back and hold a couple more trial matches before the final set of matches, then he might be in and around. He could easily take the place of any other 3 pacers that we have seen there. So, yeah, it's just up to him.
It's a bit of a worry, though, Jerome, because So O'Shane I think he got the Barbados. He played for the Pride. Sorry, not the Royals now. Sorry, the Royals. He played for the Royals in CPL, played 1-2 games and never played again.
And the problem there was fitness.
Yeah. Wasn't part of Super 50 for Scorpions. Isn't part of this squad for Scorpions in red ball cricket. I'm worried for him, Jerome, because
and he lost his Bangladesh contract as well. So it's not the best of times for him as well. So he has to do some introspection because he has a lot of fans, actually, in even where I work. A lot of people like the fact that you can get up and see a fast bowler again in Jamaica or in West Indies cricket who can just run in and bowl 90-95. That's something that has been missing West Indies cricket for some time. And that was part and parcel of why we were so great in the dominant era. So when you see something like that back in the fray, it's almost as if you want to hold it like gold. But he's not been able to keep up to standards with his fitness, and that is a little bit disappointing.
Well, we watch that story. We continue to watch in the distance and see how that story unfolds. Hopefully he can regain his form and his fitness and get back into the squad. Listen, Jerome, we're going to touch base again. Obviously, we've got the first 2 rounds. We'll have to touch base again after those 2 rounds are done, and hopefully Jamaica aren't bottom of the table.
I hope not. But the thing is, I am wary that we're not the strongest with the bats. We're not the strongest, because even the scores in the trial games, they were lopsided. So that is my major concern.
Yeah, I think I think it would be fair to say at this point before the tournament starts that if we're looking at the bat, people naturally on paper would say that Jamaica will be one of the weaker teams I think that's fair enough to say that. I hope they outperform that expectation, but I think it's fair to say they would be on paper one of the weaker teams with the bat going into the competition. But let's touch base again in a couple of weeks, Jerome, and assess how they've got on so far. But as ever, thank you for coming on and giving us that kind of detail and introspection into the state of the Scorpions squad ahead of the start of the Red Bull Championship.
No problem. I'm glad to be here as usual.
People, you know how we do when Jerome gets on. You know you're going to get that detail. You're going to get that factual analysis. Nobody does it better when it comes to Jamaica cricket. So when I drop this on the YouTube, on the Twitter, etc., make sure you go and follow Jerome at his various different handles. And any questions you got on Jamaica cricket, he's the go-to guy. But as ever, people, thank you for listening to another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.